Can you imagine a truck so massive it looks like it rolled straight out of a 1950s sci-fi movie? Now imagine that not only did it exist, but it conquered the most unforgiving terrain in North America, decades before digital technology, when everything ran on raw power and guts. Mack M45SX Prime. If there's one American brand that defines raw power on wheels, it's Mack. And the M45SX Prime is one of the best examples of that legacy. Built in the 1960s, this off-road truck was developed specifically for heavy-duty missions in mountainous terrain, construction zones, and remote areas without roads. Just by looking at it, you could tell what it was made for. A long, reinforced hood, aggressive metal grille, circular headlights, and a body that looked more like a locomotive than a truck. It was the kind of machine that demanded respect just by showing up. It packed a V8 diesel engine with 16 liters of displacement, delivering around 450 horsepower. That power was channeled smoothly through a multi-gear manual transmission, allowing it to climb steep hills even when fully loaded to the brim. The suspension used heavy-duty springs and long-travel shock absorbers, giving the M45SX outstanding stability on loose rock and mud. With six-wheel drive, it could traverse routes where even tractors hesitated. Inside the cab, things were basic but functional. A full analog dash, large gauges, a solid steering wheel, and a tight space that still felt efficient. It wasn't built for comfort. It was built to work, and that it did brilliantly. This truck was heavily used in logging operations, especially in places like Washington State. Climbing steep forest roads with enormous logs strapped to its back. It also played key roles in mining and heavy construction projects across North America. Among truckers of the time, the M45SX Prime earned a reputation for durability. Many swore it only stopped when the driver did. And honestly, that wasn't much of an exaggeration. Today, it's one of the most sought-after models by restorers and vintage truck enthusiasts. Euclid R50. In the world of mining, few names carry as much weight as Euclid. And among the giants made by this legendary brand, the R50 was a landmark machine of the 1960s. Designed specifically for open-pit mining and quarry operations, this truck was built to haul massive loads through terrain that ordinary trucks wouldn't survive. Its look was unmistakable. An oversized dump bed, offset cab, and tires taller than most people, everything about it screamed overbuilt. But that was exactly the point. It was designed to carry more, endure more, and last longer. And it did all of that without breaking a sweat. Under the hood, the R50 was powered by a V12 diesel engine with 18 liters of displacement, producing about 400 horsepower. That brute force was sent through a drivetrain to its rear four wheels, which were mounted on heavy-duty solid axles and reinforced springs. The cab sat high off the ground, accessed via a ladder. Inside, you had a full analog dashboard, thick steering wheel, and sturdy seats. The view was commanding, and despite the weight, it was surprisingly maneuverable for its size. At idle, the V12 rumbled like a distant thunderstorm. At full throttle, it sounded like a rolling avalanche of metal, echoing through the quarry and announcing its presence long before you saw it. The Euclid R50 was widely used in states like Michigan and Montana, in iron and copper mines. It became a common sight and a symbol of an era where mechanical strength ruled above all. Many operated up to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year, without downtime. Some units were later converted into mobile platforms or repurposed into custom-built farm haulers, thanks to their bulletproof construction. One of these trucks was even bought by a private collector who restored it into a monster show rig, touring vintage vehicle festivals across the United States. Kenworth 963. Very few people know about the Kenworth 963, yet it was one of the most rugged beasts ever designed to tackle terrain where no other truck dared to go. Built during the 1950s and 1960s by the legendary Kenworth, this model was engineered for extreme environments, especially oil fields in the Middle East and African deserts where temperatures hovered near 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and any breakdown could mean days of delay. From the outside, it demanded respect. Straight lines, a long hood, massive tires, and a simple yet incredibly tough cab. Visually, it looked like a military truck crossed with a space exploration vehicle. It didn't need flashy design. Its presence said it all. Under the hood, it had a straight-six diesel engine with over 14 liters of displacement, putting out around 350 horsepower. That might not sound extreme by today's standards, but back then, it was groundbreaking. Its all-wheel drive allowed it to cruise over dunes, mud pits, and loose rock with ease. The suspension was reinforced with multiple springs, and the drivetrain was pure steel and gearwork. No electronics, no digital aids. It was all muscle and mechanical genius. Yet it was as reliable as a Swiss watch. The interior was minimal. A metal dashboard, oversized steering wheel, and canvas seats made up the cab. No frills, just what you needed when driving for hours or even days through roadless, isolated regions. The Kenworth 963 was heavily used in oil pipelines, long-haul logistics, and heavy infrastructure projects in remote deserts. There are records of convoys of 20 trucks like this crossing over 1,000 kilometers of sand between oil fields and ports, carrying everything from generators to containers. Over time, many were abandoned in the desert, half buried by sand. Yet decades later, some were still intact, testament to how insanely durable this machine was. In fact, one of these trucks is still operating today in a remote village in Saudi Arabia, used as a farm hauler. That's what you call lasting power. And if the 963 already impresses with its size and story, Kenworth Dart. Now we're getting into serious heavy metal territory. The Kenworth Dart, launched in 1966, was one of the most extreme machines ever built by American engineers, designed specifically for the brutal demands of heavy mining. Its appearance was pure intimidation. A dump truck with absurd proportions, a lowered cab, and tires over 6 feet tall. It looked like someone fused a tractor, an excavator, and a truck into one beast of a machine. It was powered by a massive V12 diesel engine with 20 liters of displacement, pushing out over 500 horsepower. The most impressive part? Despite its size, the Dart could move around mining sites with surprising agility. Depending on configuration, it came with either 4- or 6-wheel drive and a dual-spring suspension system that allowed it to take on steep inclines, rutted paths, and rocky terrain like it was driving on pavement. Inside the cab, comfort was minimal, but the driving position was excellent, and the dash was well equipped for its time. This was a machine made to work hard, and it did that better than almost anything else. The Dart was deployed in coal, copper, and iron mines across states like Utah and Arizona, hauling dozens of tons at a time. Many operated 24/7 in rotating shifts, sometimes running for weeks straight without a single major breakdown. One particularly impressive story tells of a Dart that ran for over 3 years non-stop without needing a full overhaul. Even today, that's nearly impossible to match. And if you thought that was the peak of vintage off-road engineering, then go ahead, smash that like button. Caterpillar 769. If you grew up staring at giant yellow trucks in magazines, toy catalogs, or mining documentaries, chances are you've seen the Caterpillar 769, even if you didn't know it at the time. Released in the 1960s, this was Caterpillar's first ever off-road truck designed specifically for heavy-duty industrial use, and it was an instant success. Its mere presence was jaw-dropping. A towering body, angled dump bed, elevated cab, and wheels as tall as a grown adult. Everything about it was oversized, and none of it was for show. It was all about function. Beneath that huge frame sat a V8 diesel engine with 18 liters of displacement, generating around 500 horsepower. It had rear-wheel drive, but the engineering was so dialed in that it could handle gravel slopes, steep grades, and water crossings without breaking a sweat. The suspension was independent, with giant industrial-grade springs and shocks. That made the 769 surprisingly stable for its size. It didn't wobble like a boat, it held steady like a tank. The cab was straightforward, with ladder access, a no-nonsense dash, a manually adjustable leather seat, and a big steering wheel that demanded strong arms. But driving it made you feel like king of the job site. Used extensively in quarries, dirt roads, and open pit mines, the 769 launched an entire lineage of off-road haulers that continues today. Many of Caterpillar's modern models can trace their DNA back to this original beast. In fact, one mining company in Colorado still keeps a fully restored 769 as a backup truck for when their newer rigs break down. That's how dependable it was. Think that was the high point of the classic era? Think again. Pacific P12W3. The Pacific P12W3 was one of the strongest and rarest trucks to ever roam North America. Built in the 1960s by the Canadian company Pacific Trucks, this beast was widely used in the United States for missions that most vehicles couldn't even attempt. Its mission was simple: carry massive loads through hostile environments where roads didn't exist and infrastructure was just an idea. It was the ultimate logistics warhorse for remote forests, dams, and pipeline projects in the far northern regions. Its heart was a diesel V12 engine with nearly 20 liters of displacement, producing over 550 horsepower. The sound alone was enough to shake the ground. It wasn't just a truck, it was a locomotive with a steering wheel. With full-time all-wheel drive, reinforced multi-spring suspension, and a custom-built axle system, the P12W3 could handle over 120 tons with ease. Visually, it was monstrous. A tall cab with rectangular windows and a triple-pane windshield gave it the look of a mobile bunker. The hood was wide with oversized air intakes to help cool the roaring engine. And those wheels? Each one looked like it belonged on a high-powered tractor. Despite its raw functionality, veteran drivers claimed it was surprisingly easy to handle. Even empty, it weighed over 30 tons, but still drove like it was on rails. The P12W3 played a major role in projects like the Grand Coulee Dam and other massive construction efforts. It was also used in Alaska, pulling huge trailers through areas where asphalt was just a fantasy. Seeing one of these beasts in person today is nearly impossible. Only a handful still exist, mostly in museums or in the hands of passionate collectors who treat them like sacred relics of heavy-duty engineering. Oshkosh M1070. Although it's more recent than the others on this list, the Oshkosh M1070 earns its place for being a true military titan with vintage soul. Produced since the 1990s, it was developed specifically to transport M1 Abrams battle tanks. Yes, those monsters that weigh over 60 tons. And it did that job with ease. Built in the United States by the Oshkosh Corporation, the M1070 was born out of modern military demands, but its design roots are firmly grounded in the same brutal off-road philosophy as the giants of the 1960s and 70s. Its engine? A Caterpillar V8 diesel with 20 liters of displacement, producing over 700 horsepower. That kind of force was essential, considering it could pull up to 110 tons across highways, deserts, and even swamps. With 8-wheel drive and a fully independent suspension using heavy-duty coil springs, it handled steep slopes, massive potholes, and rugged trails like it was nothing. In practice, it was basically a tank, just without the turret. The cab was large, seating up to 6 crew members, each with a 5-point harness. But the real highlight was how precise it was to drive. Military drivers often described it as steering a crane with the reflexes of a sports car. Many units were later adapted for civilian use, especially in the heavy transport industry, hauling wind turbine parts, industrial components, and even decommissioned tanks. One even ended up in the hands of a Texas billionaire, who converted it into the most armored motorhome in the world, as he proudly called it. And if you thought that was wild, just wait till you meet the legendary Pacific Mac M100SX. If you thought Mac had already shown you everything with the M45SX, think again. The Mac M100SX was without a doubt the largest truck ever built by the brand, and also one of the rarest. Launched in 1965, this colossal machine was created for one mission only: to transport enormous loads in the harshest, most unforgiving conditions imaginable. Only 6 units were ever made. That's right, just 6. Each one was custom built, practically handcrafted, because every single mission it served was so specialized. If you needed to move hundreds of tons with impossible terrain, you called the M100SX. Its heart was a Detroit diesel V12 engine with a staggering 24 liters of displacement, generating over 600 horsepower. And the sound it made? It wasn't a rumble. It was a deep, constant roar that echoed through mountains like a beast awakening. It had 8-wheel drive and a heavy-duty suspension system using multiple industrial-grade springs and ultra-thick axles. Even when loaded with over 100 tons, the M100SX moved like it wasn't even trying. The cab sat high, accessed by a rugged staircase, and inside, you had everything needed to control that monster with precision. Dozens of analog gauges tracked every aspect of the truck's performance, and sitting in that seat was like being in command of a mechanical fortress. This truck was used in hyper-specific operations, moving electrical transformers, turbine parts, prefabricated steel structures, even entire locomotives, always in locations where no road could handle traditional transport. There's a story about one unit that walked on a gas pipeline project in Alaska, crossing miles of ice and loose rock without a single mechanical failure. Another was left parked at a closed mine for over 30 years, then rediscovered in near-perfect condition and is now being restored, with help from Mack itself. And if that titan of engineering blew your mind, Pacific P-16. Among the giants of the 1960s and 70s, the Pacific P-16 holds a special place, not just for its sheer power, but also for its raw, mechanical beauty. Built in Canada and widely used in the United States, especially in the logging industry, the P-16 was the undisputed king of the mountains. It had a clear purpose: to transport massive tree logs across paths that barely existed, the kind of terrain where no other truck would last more than a few days. Under the hood, it ran a V12 diesel engine with 19 liters of displacement, delivering around 580 horsepower. With full 6-wheel drive and a manual transmission with multiple gears, it offered a rare mix of power and control. Its suspension was exactly what you'd expect: ultra-reinforced springs and a floating axle system designed to handle unbalanced loads and broken terrain. And the loads were no joke. Some logs stretched over 30 meters long. The cab was narrow but rock solid. Basic seats, a dashboard full of analog gauges, and a power-assisted steering wheel. It was all business, no luxury here. The look of the P-16 became iconic. It appeared in industry magazines and documentaries, often referred to as the ultimate trucker's truck. Only the most experienced drivers were trusted with a P-16. It was a badge of honor. Some versions had a dual hitch system in the rear, allowing them to tow 2 full trailers of timber simultaneously. And yes, it could handle it. Today, a few P-16s are displayed in museums. Others have been lovingly restored by collectors. Lectrahall M200. The Lectrahall M200 is without question one of the most absurd trucks ever made on American soil. Built in the 1970s by Unit Rig, this wasn't just a dump truck. It was a futuristic experiment that actually worked. And even today, more than 50 years later, it's still jaw-dropping. The idea was revolutionary. Build a fully electric mining truck, powered by a massive diesel engine that generated electricity on the go. Basically a locomotive on wheels. Yes, really. The Lectrahall M200 had no transmission in the traditional sense. Power went straight from the generator to the wheel motors. Its diesel V16 engine had 32 liters of displacement and cranked out over 1,000 horsepower. That energy powered the electric motors driving the rear wheels, delivering insane torque that could move up to 200 tons with smooth, continuous force. Visually, it was a beast. A short front end, offset cab, huge wheels, and a dump bed that looked like a rooftop terrace. Even among mining trucks, this thing stood out. The suspension featured oscillating arms and heavy-duty springs designed to take massive impacts without losing stability. The direct electric drive made acceleration incredibly smooth, even under full load. The cab was large and well-equipped for its time. Adjustable seats, thermal insulation, and a ventilation system built for dusty, high-heat environments. It was a real workplace on wheels. The Lectrahall M200 was deployed in major coal and iron mines in the US and Canada. It became legendary for its performance and reliability, even in 24-hour non-stop operations that lasted over 15 years without requiring a structural overhaul. And here's a fun fact. The M200 was so quiet for its size that operators joked the loudest thing was the dunk bed slamming down. The electric system made it feel like it was whispering power. Today, only a handful of units remain. One is fully restored and on display at an engineering museum in Ohio. Another is still active at a training mine, helping teach the next generation of operators. Today we traveled through a world far beyond wheels, engines, every one of these giants you've seen here. So tell me in the comments, which of these colossal trucks had you never heard of? Which one impressed you the most? And if you could see just one of them up close, which one would it be? If you love this kind of content, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because every week we bring you new videos about the most extreme machines ever made to conquer ice, snow, dirt, and the wildest terrains on Earth. See you in the next video.